Brain Damage from 1988 is a cult classic horror film directed by Henenlotter. The movie is known for its surreal visuals, black humor, and body horror. Brian, the film's protagonist, becomes addicted to a parasitic creature named Aylmer, who secretes a hallucinogenic drug that causes euphoria in the user. As Brian becomes more reliant on Aylmer, he loses control of his life and relationships. The film has gained a dedicated fanbase over the years, but does it have any cultural significance, historical importance, or aesthetic value beyond its shock value? One way to approach the analysis of Brain Damage is to explore its themes and motifs. The film can be seen as a commentary on addiction and the search for pleasure. Aylmer represents a drug, and the relationship between Brian and the parasite can be read as an allegory for addiction. Brian's descent into madness and violence mirror drug addiction's destructive effects on individuals and their surroundings. The film can also be interpreted as a critique of the American obsession with instant gratification and consumerism, as Aylmer promises to provide Brian with the ultimate high at the cost of his humanity. For instance, the final scene of Brain Damage, where Brian's head opens up and releases a bright light with electrical shocks bursting through his head, can be interpreted differently. One possible interpretation is that it represents the ultimate consequence of addiction. The parasitic Aylmer, who represents addiction, has been using Brian to satisfy his own desires, and in the end, he literally explodes Brian's head. This could be seen as a metaphor for how addiction can consume and destroy a person's life, leading to their ultimate demise. Another interpretation could be that the scene represents transcendence or enlightenment. Throughout the film, Aylmer gives Brian a powerful and euphoric high that he can't find anywhere else. In the final scene, the bright light that emanates from Brian's head could represent the ultimate high or moment of enlightenment that Aylmer has been promising him. However, the violent electrical shocks bursting through Brian's head suggest that this transcendence comes at a terrible cost. The ending of Brain Damage is intentionally ambiguous and open to interpretation. It could be seen as a cautionary tale about the dangers of addiction or a metaphor for the fleeting nature of transcendence. Either way, it is a powerful and unsettling conclusion to a film that explores complex and challenging themes. From a cultural standpoint, Brain Damage is a product of its time, reflecting the anxieties and fears of the late 1980s. The film's depiction of drug addiction and the lengths people will go to satisfy their cravings reflects this era's ongoing struggle with drug epidemics such as crack cocaine. Additionally, the film's use of a parasite-like creature that manipulates and controls its host can be explained as a commentary on the dangers of addiction and the loss of agency. The dream sequence is another excellent example. In the scene, Brian is adrift in blue liquid, representing the drug-induced state that Brian experiences after the creature's secretion. The beast, Aylmer, is a metaphor for drug addiction, and the blue liquid can be seen as a visual representation of the drug itself. Throughout the film, Aylmer manipulates and controls Brian through the drug's effects, causing him to behave increasingly erratically and violently. Brian's dream sequence can be seen as a manifestation of his own internal struggle with addiction, as he becomes lost in the drug-induced state. Furthermore, the dream sequence also incorporates surrealist elements, using abstract imagery and a non-linear narrative structure. This further emphasizes addiction's disorienting and chaotic nature and its effects on the individual. On a side note, using the color blue in the dream sequence can also be interpreted as symbolic. In color theory, blue is often associated with feelings of calmness, tranquility, and relaxation. However, in the context of the film, the blue liquid is associated with addiction and control, suggesting a darker and more sinister interpretation of the color. Even though this is becoming a tangent, I love the ambiguity in this scene. Anyways, historically, Brain Damage can be viewed as a continuation of the body horror genre that emerged in the 1970s and 1980s. This horror subgenre typically involves the physical transformation and degradation of the human body, often through grotesque special effects. Brain Damage certainly fits this mold, with Aylmer's brain-sucking abilities leading to graphic depictions of violence and bodily harm. In this way, the film can reflect the anxieties surrounding physical decay and decay that have long existed within horror cinema. Aesthetically, Brain Damage is a visually striking film. with its use of vivid colors and surreal imagery adding to the overall sense of unease and disorientation. Henenlotter's direction creates a dreamlike quality to the film that feels otherworldly and grounded in reality. Additionally, the film's practical effects add a tactile element to the horror, making the violence and gore feel more visceral and impactful. Another interpretation of the film is that it serves as a criticism of capitalism and consumerism. Aylmer can be seen as a metaphor for consumer products that promise instant gratification and pleasure but ultimately have negative consequences. This interpretation is supported by the film's depiction of Brian's increasing dependence on Aylmer and his willingness to go to great lengths to obtain the drug. In conclusion, Brain Damage can be seen as culturally significant, historically important, and aesthetically pleasing in its own way. The film's themes, motifs, and stylistic elements make it a unique and memorable addition to the horror genre. The film's practical effects and surreal imagery have influenced other filmmakers and inspired a dedicated fan base. Brain Damage may not be for everyone, but it is a film that rewards those who appreciate the weird and the grotesque in cinema.